Welcome to the Army Painter Academy, where we're excited to share another fantastic tutorial from our studio team. All right, let's set the stage. Today, we're doing something a little different. This isn't a speed paint recipe. This isn't a perfect recipe. This is about choice, mood, and confidence in execution. We're looking at volumes 3 and 4 from our masterclass series designed in collaboration with legendary artist and wargaming visionary John Blanche. We'll showcase chroma, style, and mood through the lens of Warpaint's fanatic performance while we answer a simple question. What happens when two great painters take the same miniature, one paints it warm while the other paints it cool? Same model, same paint system, very different outcomes. You're going to see Joachim Vanilla Ice McLaughlin working from the cool set to paint a heresy accurate and one of the most understood factions, the World Eaters, and Tyler Firestarter Mengel taking the warm route to accomplish his word bearers, the perfectly rated Erebus word bearers. Both pulling from the John Blanche sets, plus select colors from our Warpaint's Fanatic and Speed Paint ranges where it makes sense. This tutorial should illustrate that advanced painting is approachable and that strong results come from understanding your tools, not being intimidated by them. And if at any point you're thinking, wait, I could actually do that? Good, that is exactly the point. And if you want to explore these paints yourself, they're available at thearmypainter.com. All right, let's paint. We're starting where every miniature starts, base coating. Right away, you'll see two very different moods emerge. Joachim, working cool, begins by establishing a grounded, earthy foundation. He's using tones that immediately feel cold, desaturated, and earthy, with colors like Dew Path, Ash Root, Moonbeam Yellow, and Ivory White. You can probably guess what Joachim's wet palette looks like as he's rough blending and wet blending this environmental base coat, leveraging the slightly longer drying time of the Fanatic paints to execute a moody setting on this Warhammer Horus Heresy Saturnine Terminator miniature. The Wargamer base coating brush is perfect for the job here as it offers a belly big enough to load lots of thin down paint for that base coating phase with a tip precise enough for some of the early detail work. Notice how the Warpaint's Fanatic coverage lets him stay thin, but still opaque, especially on the larger armor panels. He's going to pull Fiery Vermilion and Blanche Berry from Volume 2, and with his layering brush to begin some source lighting inside the helm of this monstrous warsuit. Now on the other side of the temperature spectrum, Tyler is setting up something warmer and more severe. This is where that John Blanche warm palette really shines. It gives you atmosphere before you even start highlighting. I love to see the brushes being used by both painters at this stage. Joachim with the pointed Wargamer brushes, Tyler employing our round Masterclass and angled Wargamer dry brushes to get started, proving once again when it comes to the Army Painter and miniature painting in general, there are no rules, just paint. Use what works best for you. Now, if you're new to miniature painting, this step matters more than you think. Your base coat isn't just getting color on the model. It's deciding the emotional temperature of the whole piece, and understanding that will help you whether you're painting single miniatures for your cabinet collection, and can be immensely influential when painting entire armies. Once the initial base coat of Umber Root is applied, Tyler will add a wash to unify the layer and emphasize the details using Vine Root. Again, same miniature, two very different stories are already emerging as we move on to the armor highlights, and this is where the intention begins to show. Joachim is keeping his highlights cool and controlled, building contrast without losing that grounded, almost painterly feel. Joachim and Tyler have two very unique and differing painting styles. Pay attention to the combination of colors as they appear on your screen and how Joachim blends them on the surface of the miniature to achieve the look he's working towards. The Fanatic range really earns its keep here. Smooth transitions, predictable behavior, no chalkiness. Notice how Joachim is still highlighting into the shadows, just with cooler and more desaturated colors, while leaning into the inherent warmth of Ivory White for the source light inspired highlights.
Got the Bloodthorn and the Umber Root, and there's my mix. So it's mostly Bloodthorn, but I just mixed a little bit of that brown in. And this is going to be the start of the slower process. So you might be wondering, we're just going to layer over top of everything we just did? No, because we're going to build in some texture. So even though we're painting a Warhammer model, this is my style that I've been calling my trench style, because I came up with it, or not came up with it, it existed. I started playing around with it when I started playing Trench Crusade. Don't tell James Workshop. but it's just a more grimdark kind of thing. It builds in some texture. You can see I'm not going for like super smooth blends here.
Meanwhile, Tyler pushes contrast in a trench direction. His highlights feel more stark, more dramatic, almost unforgiving. And that's a deliberate choice, not a technical flex. Or is it? Tyler is known for his super clean edges and fine highlighting skills. Tyler continues on his edge highlighting crusade here with his own custom blend of Bloodthorn, Umberrot, and Hearthborn. So we did not limit the artist from branching further into the arsenal of the wider Warpaints Fanatic, Warpaints Historic, Infinity, Warpaints Air Halo, Speed Paint, and other amazing colors Thomas and the studio have been creating over the years. I just think that they, along with many community artists, have enjoyed mixing within the sets to see how working with a limited palette could expand their own miniature art expression. All right, right here, this is a great moment to pause and say, there is no right version here. Warm doesn't mean soft, cool doesn't mean harsh. They're just different tools and both are very valid. Cool and broad painterly blends that emote and stark, vivid, almost technically highlighted scratches, dots, and layers. That's the comparison between Joachim and Tyler. Where Joachim achieves layered volume at the surface level, Tyler elects to scratch and glaze in a layered approach to pull focus, this time with Vine Root thinned with Speed Paint Medium and a reapplication of the highlight on the highest points. Now with these giant pauldrons protecting the Legionnaire underneath, these iconic shoulder pads are one of those areas that reveal everything about your approach, giving you plenty of space to play, but there is also no hiding your style or method on these big broad surfaces. Joachim treats them almost like canvases. It's probably a good time to remind you, gentle viewers at home, that Joachim is painting a heresy-accurate World Eater scheme, so white armor with blue pauldrons. With the blue applied, it really helps contrast against the warm source lighting, making them read warmer even though he's employed a cool color theory to this Terminator. Now Tyler, on the other hand, used this area to reinforce structure and shape. He's using his custom blend to base coat the pauldrons and other bits that may read black or metal later on. The cooler tones here help to push the warmth of the red armor even further. Now, if you've ever struggled with focal points, this is a great place to practice. Tyler uses the sculpted definition of the miniature to guide his focal points. Where Joachim is painting within the lines, well, okay, sometimes over the lines, that's okay in the early stages. Tyler is painting on top of the lines, so to speak, in smaller and smaller fashions to pull your focus on the details as he's choosing to emphasize them. Both approaches take courage. One requires more patience through discipline, the other more patience through the process. Leave a note in the comments which approach feels more comfortable to you and which one scares you the most. Metals. That's where a lot of painters panic. I got my hand up in the air because I definitely do. If you watch any of the tutorials, you've heard me say this before, I am bad at painting metallics. Now, let's watch two fearless approaches that benefit from the specialized blend of aluminum flake and mica featured in the Warpaints Fanatic Metallics range. But even great tools have some best practices, which we'll learn from Joachim and Tyler today. Now here's one point where both of our painters are thinking alike, both starting off with a base coat of heavy metal, a versatile deep metal from the original John Blanche Masterclass volumes. Joachim's metals feel worn, lived in, and integrated into the model. There's a heaviness to the end result, fitting as he began with a layer of heavy metal, washed down with a custom shade before preparing some bronze trim using the beautiful ash root from the range. So for you panic painters out there, this is a great tip that can help you in your metallics process. Begin with a light colored acrylic to create a cleaner surface that will help your next metallic layer cover much easier, as we're doing here with Emperor's Gold from the first volumes. Warm skin shade with a bit of Pine Hollow works really nicely. The inherent ruddiness of the skin shade mixed with the deep bluish greens from Pine Hollow's shadow create a grounded, almost worn finish to that brass. He's going to clean up the gray metallics by layering heavy metal, then some plate mail metal, and finally some mithril from the core Warpaints Fanatic range. Notice how Joachim is applying these true metallic metals in a similar fashion that you would if you were trying to paint non-metallic metals, which adds even more to the environment he's creating with this very cool set. We'll finish it off with a mix of Emperor Gold and True Brass to iron out the brass details. Now here Tyler's finishing up with that heavy metal base coat on his word bearer. Even saying the words word bearer gives me flashbacks to the Horus Heresy trilogy. Ugh. Using some speed paint medium and grimdark shadow, the world's most requested wash to be sold by the bucket, to apply his first unifying shade over the metal before adding a bit of life to specific metal bits with a wash of Pine Hollow shade. Now, I've said this before, and I will say it again. For anyone that looks down on the dry brushing technique, which Tyler is using here, as if it's like a novice technique, well, Tyler is, and I'm not just saying this because I hired him, it's true, he is one of the best true metallic metal painters in the world. It's a toss-up between him and our very own Caleb Wissenbeck of CK Studios fame. If it's good enough for Tyler, I promise you it's good enough for you. Now he'll tidy up the initial dry brush highlight with a focused application of plate mail metal, using edge highlights and layered highlights and applying some scratches and hatches to add a bit of wear to these metals. To compare, Joachim's metallics appear lively due to his use of tone and volume, where Tyler's metals are deeper, darker, almost sharper due to the contrast he brings out with his techniques. They contrast beautifully against the surrounding tones without overpowering them, and again, same paint system, same fundamentals, just a different intent. Okay, this is where Joachim quietly starts showing off because you begin to notice things. There's some extra bits there, little flourishes, subtle kit bashing. There's an unspoken rivalry between studio painters, and I think being the new kid on the block, he wasn't afraid to strut his stuff a little bit. So let's see how that works out for him. But this is really smart, because these extra bits give him more areas to reinforce the cool environment he is executing. Cooler tones mixed into the base colors help to root the core colors in the miniature into the setting. Even when applying a very saturated red speed paint in Blood Moon Red or using fiery vermilion, the cool tones help tie everything together, even while allowing those warmer colors to exist. He's going to move on to using our new chipping brushes, and the precision chipping brush to be specific, with a bit of ironclad gray and banshee brown to apply some weathering onto the armor. If you're new to using these brushes, we recommend pulling some of the foam off to make some uneven edges for a more realistic pattern. And also, when in doubt, apply less pressure and frequency at first. Inspect your work, add more later if you like, because it's a lot easier to add more later than to try and cover it up if you do overdo it. I love this trick here. He's thinning some ash root to apply a weathered glaze, pulling this thinned down paint in a downward motion to create a worn, streaking effect. Super easy. Next, Joachim's going to prepare some plasma coils. By thinning down some matte white, this usually works best with at least a couple thin layers. He's thinned frost veil from the set, thin to a glaze consistency, and he's going to apply that glaze over the coils. He's going to follow that with some fiery vermilion in a similar fashion on some other bits on this miniature. Now he's going to add some moonbeam yellow to the previous white and apply this into the recesses of those coils. Next, he'll edge some frost veil mixed with darkness to the cooler outer parts of the coil to finish off this effect. Let's check in with Tyler as he base coats the remaining bits on his mini, first using umber root for the leather. And if you're ever in doubt about what brush to use, our Wargamer brushes feature a description usually explaining its best use. For example, Tyler is using a layering brush. For those of you more familiar with number standards, this is approximately a number 1, which is also included on the label and in the name. Now, you may be wondering about the Psycho brush. If you use it, it's because you're a psycho. Actually, it means you're painting psychotically small details like pupils of the eyes. All right, next, everything here is going to be highlighted with Emperor Gold, fine-tuned with a mix of the gold and plate mail metal. Moving along, he will use a bit of matte black to prepare some future bits later on, like the lenses and gems, and also the piping and housing. A simple highlight of ironclad gray on the housing will get the party started. Well, we're going to go with a mix of glade shard and matte black. We're just going to apply this to the lower third of the lens and gems. We'll also use this as a base coat for the coils to kickstart his glow effects. A pure application of pure glade shard establishes the true vibrancy of that color, because it really is a nice, vibrant green. Thomas did a great job translating Mr. Blanche's vision through this color and the rest of the colors in the range. Next, to push that effect even further, Tyler's going to use a touch of sun petal to make this glow effect really glow. Interesting, similarly to Joachim, and I can't even tell you, these guys painted these separately, and when I say separately, Joachim was in Denmark, Tyler was in the States as they painted these miniatures. I don't think that they were talking throughout this process, so it's interesting to see the similarities that they bring to life, even using two different temperature sets. Tyler's doing a dual glow effect on his miniature just like Joachim. Joachim with blue and red, Tyler with green and red. Instead of the speed paint, Tyler's using Bloodthorn, found inside the 4th volume in this Masterclass series. And after that initial base coat, he thins a bit of the Bloodthorn with a bit of water and glazes this around the glowing areas to add a glaze for ambiance before applying a focused application of Ember Veil to turn that glow into a scorching orange. Interestingly, Tyler's going to apply this effect to the shield generator mount on the shoulder pauldron as well, reinforcing the effect with some sun petal, and then applying a glaze of the Ember Veil that makes this glow almost appear molten, fitting for the warm theme for this miniature. All right, so you remember when I was talking about studio painters showing off? Well, Joachim was showing off with his bits. I think Tyler's going to...
There we go. That's much better.
As I was saying, somewhere around this point, Tyler realizes Joachim has extra skulls and absolutely cannot let that stand. Cue the panic, cue the frantic scrolling, cue the anything you can do, I can do better energy. It's funny, but it's also real. We've all been there, and honestly, that little moment of competition pushes both models further. Tyler continues with a thin layer of root path over the new scrolls he's added to compensate for his lack of extra bits. Once that first coat is dried, he'll apply another thin layer for texture before shading it down with some Voodoo Shade thinned with Speed Paint Medium. Once that's dry, he'll apply a textured highlight with Root Path mixed with some Hearthborn, followed by a refined edge highlight of the previous mixture, and then with some Ivory White mixed in. We'll reestablish some of the shading before freehanding some script on the scrolls, perfectly suited for this word bearer that he is painting. Now I get it, freehand may be intimidating. It's really not as difficult as it seems though. The trick is to thin down your paints and use the right brush. You don't want to load it too much with your paint. Once you do, you could always wick away some of the excess on your hand or on a paper towel, but he's using a Wargamer Insane Detail brush here, which is absolutely perfect for the job. And I guess it wouldn't be a warm mini without a bit of fire. So Tyler will begin with a primary base coat of Sun Petal. This bright yellow is the perfect base to then next be layered into Ember Veil, a vivid orange from the set. We'll apply this thick and then in thinner passes to mesh and marry the yellow into the orange, and we'll follow that process with some Bloodthorn on the very tips of the flame, which will finish off by mixing in a bit of matte black for a very simple but realistic smoky effect towards the end of those flame details. To finish this off, he will thin down some matte white and apply this as a glaze to the hottest center of the flame. Very, very cool work, Tyler. Now the base is the final frame around the story that we're crafting here today. Joachim keeps his base textured with an alternating application of Ashroot and Sunburst Ochre in a wet stippling fashion, which is a cool way to achieve a dirty and dusty look. He'll use Bramble Grove, one of my favorite colors from the new range, and then mixed in with a bit of Ivory White to layer up the stone rubble. Using Grim Rust to apply a weather down wash to select focal areas on the base, followed by a mix of Pine Hollow and Warm Skin Shade over the entirety of the base. This will help unify all of the previous work. Then we'll go back to that Ashroot Sunburst Ochre mix to reinforce the dusty effects. In a similar vein, he'll reinforce the original highlights on the rubble with Bramble Grove before painting the rim of the base. Where Joachim's base is grounded and it supports the miniature without stealing too much attention, Tyler plays more on the warm theme with a warm, almost arid jungle theme for his base that introduces some greens that help to contrast the red armor. Using a similar alternating wet blend approach for the first layers, which will be followed up with a dry brush of Thicket Grove, the previously mentioned warm green. This will be shaded down with a Grove Hollow and Speed Paint Medium wash, with other features further shaded with Voodoo Shade from the first volumes in this range. He'll tidy up some of the highlights, pick out the details with some highlighting and dry brushing on the stone ruin and skull before painting the marine helmet on the base. What I really like about what Tyler does with this base is the application of Thicket Grove and Glade Shard. This gives this arid jungle base an overgrown appearance. And you know what, why not? Let's put some blood effects on this massive Thunder Hammer. I mean, really, it's not just a Thunder Hammer, it's the entire storm. Look at the thing. So what did we learn? That advanced painting isn't about secret techniques. It's about choices. Warm or cool, soft or sharp, restrained or bold. We at the Army Painter are incredibly proud to work with the legendary artist John Blanche to help share his vision with more hobbyists. And the John Blanche Masterclass paint sets, combined with the Warpaints Fanatic and Speed Paint, and the rest of the Army Painter's range of paints and accessories, are developed to help you make those choices confidently without ever having to fight your materials. Whether you're brand new to the hobby or you've been painting for decades, there's room to experiment, explore, and push your own style. If you'd like to try this approach yourself, you'll find everything used here at thearmypainter.com or when you visit your friendly local game store. And if this video helped make something feel more achievable, then it did its job. Like and subscribe to see more.